next inductee is a man who is obsessed in trying to get it right, as they say, and by the results of a great career, he certainly has accomplished his goal. He was born in Ontario, Canada in 1952, moving to Miami with his family in 1961. As a youngster, he dabbled in amateur boxing, a little bit of fun, but it was more he enjoyed spending time with his grandfather on Friday evenings, watching boxing on the Gillette Cavalcade of Sports. That put his interests on a path that would eventually lead him here today. In the late 1980s, he met Jimmy Resnick, who at the time was on the Florida State Athletic Commission. On a marathon drive together between Georgia and Florida, the two talked boxing nonstop. Jimmy invited him to see how fellow inductee Alvin Goodman could give him his start at the Miami Beach Convention Hall and start training to be a boxing judge. After working with some great teachers, he became a full-time judge and would go on to a stellar career. It didn't take long for his reputation to grow, and soon he found himself working not only in Florida, but nationally and even internationally. He judged around 40 world title bouts as well as 300 to 400 regional titles and wound up working for every major sanctioning body in the world. He most enjoyed working 3 title fights involving the great Roy Jones Jr. He wound up being named one of the top 10 judges in the sport with a 100% rating by the ABC, Association of Boxing Commissions. One of the things that he's most proud of in his judging career, he was never on the short end of a split decision in judging. Jimmy Resnick and Alvin Goodman were the major influences in his career, but there was no greater influence and probably no greater friend than Florida Boxing Hall of Famer Don Hazelton. When Don left the Florida State Boxing Commission to take over as director of the Miccosukee Boxing Commission, he was invited to come along and serve as director of boxing and Don's right-hand man. Well, he jumped at the chance. Now, like the rest of us who were lucky enough to work with Don at one point or another, he was not immune to having his ear chewed on or some other sundry body part if it was found that something he did was questionable to Don. But as we also found out, he could never ask for a better teacher, mentor, or friend than Don. Besides working with Don and helping to bring countless great nights of pro boxing to South Florida, he was most proud of Miccosukee being #1 in the ratings of the North American commissions by the federal government. Even in his retirement, he remains active in his sport, joining fellow longtime judge Peter Trematera in helping to establish the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame Don Hazelton Scholarship Fund. He is as well liked as he is respected for his entire body of work. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame class of 2014, boxing judge and administrator, Paul Herman.
Well, pretty much everything I wanted to say as far as giving credit to the people who got me started was said by Bob, and I appreciate that, Bob. It was a nice introduction. First, I'd like to thank Butch and Kathy and Bob and everybody, Steve Canton, everybody that's involved with the Boxing Hall of Fame. In just 6 short years, they've put this organization not only on the map, but one we can be proud of, and probably one of the best Hall of Fames in the country. I can only imagine how difficult it is for the selection committee to make their decisions. There's so many deserving people, there's so many deserving judges, referees, everybody. And I am just eternally grateful that they saw fit to induct me into the class of 2014. Bob mentioned, and it's it's a classic story of how I got started with Jimmy Resnick, and our kids went to summer camp together, and we were introduced by an old coach of mine, and he said, "You'd be interested in meeting Jimmy. He's on the Florida Athletic Commission, and you've always been involved in boxing." Shook his hand. "How are you? Nice to meet you." Visiting day is over. I go into the parking lot to get my car, and there's Jimmy banging on the hood of his car. Evidently, his Avis car had broken down. We had to take a 2-hour ride to the Atlanta airport. I offered to give him a ride. Jimmy sat in the front seat, and like Bob said, we talked boxing for 2 hours. I asked Jimmy, I said, if there's anything I can ever get involved in the sport, please let me know. I'll work for free. I'll do anything you want me to do. I just want to be around the sport. He says, I think you'd make a good judge after talking to you. And he said, you know what? Here's my number. Give me a call in about a week. So I waited exactly a week. I gave him a call. First thing I said is, do you remember who I am? And he said, of course. He said, I'll tell you what I want you to do. He says, I want you to go to the Miami Beach Convention Center. There's a fight Tuesday night. And I want you to go see a guy by the name of Alvin Goodman. And he's going to instruct you as to what to do next. I went to the Miami Beach Convention Center where Jimmy said my name would be on the list to get in. It wasn't. So I had to sort of BS my way into the venue and looked at ringside for Alvin Goodman. Alvin was a great guy. I'm sorry he wasn't able to accept this award himself. He really not only is a commissioner, but a guy who really took care of the officials at ringside. He made sure that everybody knew what they had to do. Alvin was famous for his scenarios, which just aren't done anymore, where he'd say, fighter A did this and fighter B did that, and how would you score that round if these things happened? And you'd have 10 judges around you, and they'd all be trying to answer the question, and of course Alvin would give you his opinion, and even if I didn't agree with Alvin's opinion, he'd still show me a couple of magic tricks and help make my evening. The main reason I'm standing here tonight is because of my beautiful wife, Susie, and my 2 beautiful daughters, Emily and Jana. Susie was always so supportive of my passion for boxing. Even when I was away from home sometimes for days, it'd be in South Africa, Thailand, wherever Ed Levine would send me. I worked for all the major sanctioning bodies, so I was everywhere in Europe and of course doing fights in Las Vegas and in my dream Madison Square Garden, where I was just pinching myself and couldn't believe I was there doing a fight for HBO. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world. And I was. The other person that was probably the most important person in my life and one of the greatest men I ever met, and would become not just my best friend and mentor, but he was like a father to me. Don Hazelton. He truly changed my life. He was always a tough guy at ringside, like Bob again said, to all his officials. But it was his way of teaching and molding us, so we would carry ourselves like true professionals at the highest level, but also be the best people we could be. And that was really important. He wanted you to act properly all the time. If I was talking to someone next to me in between rounds because they asked me a question, I'd get that evil eye across ringside and he'd say to me, you don't want the press to think that you're talking to someone or giving them your score or doing whatever, just keep your mouth shut, make sure you have 2 pens on you, and score the round. Don must have seen something in me that he liked. He expected more from me than anyone else. When he resigned his position as executive director after 9 years on the Florida State Commission, again, as you know, he started the Miccosukee Athletic Commission boxing program, and he was given the charge by the tribe of just being the best commission it could be. Don, as always, accomplished that. He asked me to give up judging and come over and assist him with that, where he taught me how to be a good director, a good ringside guy who knew how to handle the situations that would come up. This was special. Don was always supported by his children and his wonderful wife, Jerry. And let me tell you, she was a good sport. The Miccosukee tribe is in South Miami, and Don lived in Tallahassee. And he wasn't a youngster anymore, and he had a lot of commuting to do, and he did it for every fight. And I learned so much from him about becoming a fair and effective director.
What?
It was only 2 years ago, a short time before his death, that Jerry, his children, and myself watched him be inducted into the Hall. This was not only one of the most special moments of his life, it also meant the world to me and to the rest of his family. We couldn't have been any prouder of him if we tried. Now to get to join him in the Hall, along with the brotherhood of many special people who have contributed so much to the sport of boxing, I am truly grateful and humbled to stand here with what I think are some of the best boxing people in the world who have done so much for this great sport. All of you are either in the Hall or associated with it, give so much of your time and more to the sport we love so much, the sweet science, and that's special. Thank you so much.
Eventually. It's like a video game. Oh, he's gonna walk right in front of me. Good job.